The motorcycle launch season is almost upon us, and there are plenty of rumours swirling around on the internet about what might be released ahead of the new model year. So here are my picks of the most exciting propositions for 2024. First up, we've got a whole slew of new Suzukis on the cards, and so it looks like it could be a busy few months for them. A lot of these come from the California Air Resources Board, or coincidentally CARB, which is a government agency that aims to reduce air pollution. So all new bikes have to be registered with them in advance of going on sale, along with their details and emissions figures, and then CARB just handily publish those on the internet for everyone to see. Typically, listings here are grouped around a given engine because it'll usually have the same emissions in whatever bike it's used in, and so here we've got the 776cc parallel twin that Suzuki announced last year for their all-new GSX A-Test Naked and the V-STROM 800DE Adventure bike. Now there's also a V-STROM 800DE Adventure Edition listed, which is basically an accessorized special with the panniers and skid plate and whatnot, but also there's just a regular old V-STROM 800, which is a new addition. Now it's not uncommon for manufacturers to put out a few flavors of their adventure bikes. Take the Tigers from Triumph for example, which come in the road biased GT spec or the off-road biased rally spec, and so I'd expect pretty much the same approach here. The existing 800DE is quite a tall bike on fairly long suspension, and you've got large diameter spoke wheels with a 21-inch at the front and 17 at the rear, and they also come as standard with Dunlop Trail Max Mixtour tires, which are built to blend on and off-road ability. All of these factors, the big wheels, semi-knobbly tires and long suspension, will naturally compromise road performance with a bit of a Vega feel with the handling and also a higher center of mass. Plus, a certain amount of lurching back and forth is to be expected on long suspension with 220mm of travel. So if you've always liked the look of this bike, but you're realistically never going to actually off-road it and you want something that will handle a bit more like a road bike, then perhaps it's worth waiting for this standard non-DE version. I'd expect it to sit a little lower. You'll probably get cast wheels with a smaller 19-inch front that should feel a bit more precise, and I'd also expect more road-biased tires too, with a bit more of a sports touring tread pattern. Now the other way that manufacturers try and get the most revenue out of their R&D spend is to spin out multiple genres of bike from the same platform, and there's speculation that Suzuki will expand the use of this new parallel twin to more than just the existing naked and adventure segments. Japanese motorcycle publication Young Machine apparently have some insider sources, and they're usually pretty reliable on this stuff, and they're saying that the next model up could be a fared sports bike called something like the GSX A-TAR. And it'd make total sense. I mean, look at the way that Yamaha have successfully built a comprehensive range of bikes out of their CP2 parallel twin over the years. From the MT-07 Naked to the XSR 700 Retro to the Tenere 700 Adventure bike, Tracer 7 Tourer, and perhaps most relevant here, the R7 sports bike. Thing is, it would also plug a bit of a gap in their lineup because at least here in the UK, their sports bike lineup has become massively depleted over the past few years. The famous Gixxers, so the GSX R1000, the 750 and the 600, have all been discontinued now owing to increasingly strict emissions regulations in Europe, and also Suzuki's lack of development on those engines. And so now, if you've got your heart set on a Suzuki sports bike, then you've really only got two choices, and they're absolute extremes, so one being the tiny GSX R125, and the other being the 1300cc Hayabusa. Maybe something right in the middle would be a good thing, and the GSX AR seems like a sensible way to achieve that with an engine that's ready to go and already emissions compliant. Number 3, also coming from Suzuki, would be a bike potentially called the GSX S1000T, which has apparently been spotted out testing on numerous occasions. Now in the last year or two, they've successfully updated their GSX S1000 Naked, plus the GT version, which is more like a low-slung sports tourer with a bit of wind protection. But other manufacturers like Yamaha with the Tracer 9, Kawasaki with the Versys 1000, or BMW with the S1000 XR and its 900 equivalent are having plenty of sales success with a style of bike called the crossover. Generally, they're like sports tourers, but they're jacked up on almost adventure bike style suspension for a commanding road presence and an upright and spacious riding position. So this GSX S1000 GT is rumored to take their 1000 platform and apply this winning formula. Expect the same 150 horsepower inline 4 at the heart, some of the same hardware like the Brembo brakes, and of course similar electronics too, but it looks like there'll be more of a fairing and windscreen for better wind protection, handguards as well to the same effect, and then this taller stance which will lead to a taller seat height. Honestly, it's not really the sexiest category of bike, but we did review the GT last year and it really was excellent, fast, fun and comfortable, and so I'd expect nothing else from Suzuki here. Now we finally move away from Suzuki, and again we've got those California Air Resources board filings showing what could be a new variant of Ducati's super successful DESERTX adventure bike. This is one of those bikes that everyone seems to absolutely love when they review it, and so naturally you'd expect Ducati to keep expanding their range in this area. Now typically a rally edition of a bike would be something more hardcore and off-road biased, like their MULTISTRADA V4 Rally, which gets spoke wheels as standard and longer travel suspension, which make it more suited to riding over rough terrain. But the thing with the DESERTX is that it's already pretty aggressively geared towards that sort of riding. It's already tall, it's already got the right wheels and tires, and so for this one I'd be more so expecting it to be a heavily accessorized version that gets the absolute works in terms of robustness. So things like more protection from the sump guard and engine bars would help, maybe there'll be a bit more of a windscreen too, and there's also the rear fuel pod in their accessories catalogue, which boosts fuel range, which is all important if you're rally riding, as you might not be able to fill up that frequently in remote locations. Still, I'm excited to see what this one comes out like, and hopefully it'll get a fresh lick of rally raid style paint too. Now again, from Carb, we've also got an update to the bigger sibling of the DESERTX, and that's the MULTISTRADA V4. At the moment it comes in the base spec, there's also the S model on top of that with the better brakes and suspension, then there's the rally model with the extra goodies, the spoke wheels and the 30-litre fuel tank, and then the top dog in terms of price is the Pikes Peak Edition, which goes all in on road performance with 17-inch wheels front and rear and a racy paint job. But these new filings reveal a Grand Tour version which one assumes would be road biased and focus on distance and comfort. Perhaps surprisingly though, it looks as though it'll come with the regular standard 22-litre fuel tank, but apart from that I'd expect an absolute boatload of accessories, so things like peripheral lighting, a comfier seat, heated grips and seats, and of course their front and rear facing radars as standard. These will enable blind spot warnings from the rear, but perhaps more importantly for a Grand Tour style bike, you've got active cruise control at the front, which really does help to remove a little bit of fatigue from those longer rides. Over to Honda now, and it's been roughly 4 years since the current iteration of their Africa Twin adventure bike was announced, and so it naturally makes sense for an update to come soon. Cycle World are said to have seen type approval paperwork for a model called the SD14, which can only really be an Africa Twin. In Honda's internal model code, the first character being S would mean it'll be large capacity, and D means dual sport, so a new Africa Twin seems nailed on. For me though, it'll be interesting to see where they actually go with this new update. The latest tech like the MULTISTRADA's radars are surely a must, and you'd also expect a bit of a visual update too, but I'm wondering whether they'll do anything to boost its power figures to keep it more competitive with the ever-increasing oomph that we're seeing in the large capacity adventure market. The Tiger 1200 from Triumph, for example, was just updated last year, and it took a big hike up to 150 horsepower. The MULTISTRADA V4 makes more like 170 horses, and BMW are preparing to release an updated 1300 GS, which one can only assume will be a little more punchy. This current 1100cc iteration of the Africa Twin though, well, it makes more like 100 horsepower, and if you predominantly ride off-road then it's more than enough, but if you want an adventure bike for that GT side of things, then 2-up with full luggage, it might start to look a little sluggish compared to the competition. Cycle World do highlight that Honda in the past have undertaken a project to build a supercharged version of the Africa Twin, and while that seems like a massive long shot to me, I'm certainly looking forward to what they come up with for this update. Now, a bike not really in need of any more power would be the KTM 1290 Duke with its blisteringly quick V-twin, but it looks like they're going to be doing it anyway, with dealer listings uncovered by Bennett's Bike Social showing a new 1390 engine for 2024. In fact, we've also seen the spy shots of a new bike out on the road, and so I think this one is guaranteed for an announcement later this year. Firstly, I'd expect a bit of a lift in power, so the current gen makes 177 horsepower peak, which might seem like plenty, but some of the competition like the Ducati Street Fighter V4 are up over 200 horsepower, so this new 1390 could be a little bit closer, and it also looks like they've given it a bit of a visual reworking with a new stacked LED headlight, as opposed to the insectoid appearance of the previous gen. Now the 1290 is one of the wildest, most ridiculous road bikes that I've ever reviewed, so I'd be excited to ride this new bike as I'd expect it to go even further. Next up, in at number 8, it's the Moto GUZZI V100 STELVIO, which looks to take their recently announced V100 Roadster and put it in a more versatile adventure bike chassis. Now this one we've already published a full video on, and so I'll link to it on the screen here so you can get the full details by clicking it now and giving it a watch. I'd love to know which bike you're most excited about seeing in the comments down below, so do let me know, and hit subscribe if you've not already if you want to see the full details of any of these bikes when they're fully announced later this year, as we'll be covering as many as we can through the next few months. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll catch you in the next one.